Hello! We are back to the living section of years 7 to 8 for SplashClan. This is the second part of this year, so I would suggest going back and watching the first video with the StarClan cats before this one. But I won't spend too much time here, and I will just get right into it. Starting off in year 7, Lightspots was becoming more and more strange as time passed, and this only got worse when his daughter Pumpkinkit died. He was unable to be comforted by this, and throughout years 7 and 8 he lost his other two kits as well, Poolpaw and Hootheart, which really brought him down. Regardless of the immense amount of grief he was dealing with, he still kept up with his warrior duties and was constantly setting a good example for the younger cats of the clan. He ended up later realizing that due to the loss of Pumpkinkit, he had a hard time being around kits, since to him they were a constant reminder of the daughter he had lost. Regardless of that though, he begrudgingly let Nutkit, Brokenkit, and Icekit be around him and play with his tail since their mother, Weedspeckle, used to be his apprentice. However, this led to Icekit not liking him since she constantly begged him for some battle training as a kit, which he refused to give her since she was so young. The mass disappearance later happened, and many of Lightspots' closest friends were gone within the blink of an eye, most prominently Snapfern, who he had been in love with for years. It was because of this additional loss, plus the past losses of his daughters, Pumpkinkit and Poolpaw, that he began to finally realize that Ganetstar was taking advantage of his kindness. It was around this time when Lightspots realized that he was fully ready to retire to the Elder's Den, but he put it off due to still feeling like the clan needed him, especially so after the mass disappearance. Ganetstar used that to their advantage once Brackenshade retired early to the Elder's Den and elected Lightspots as deputy in his place. He was incredibly shocked by this and was unsure of how to handle the pressure of leading a clan at all. Though he fully intended to retire from his position, Ganetstar died before he got the chance to, and now Lightspots was SplashClan's leader. He received his 9 lives, farsightedness from Snapfern, clear sight from Lightgale, adventure from Pumpkinkit, confidence from Jadezinnia, strength from Hootheart, determination from Weedspeckle, honesty from Poolpaw, charity from Longpool, and tireless energy from Thornheart. Lightstar was now the second ever leader of SplashClan, and he vowed that he would be the best leader he could possibly be. Lightstar's been leader for 3 months now, and things have slowed down, but overall, he feels an immense amount of pressure. Far too much for him to be dealing with at his age. He's been spending more time in the Elder's Den with Brackenshade, feeling as though he's the only cat who can really understand what he's going through, since he was deputy once and he's also going through the loss of his own kits. Overall, he's having a hard time as leader, but hopefully things will get better for him soon. As mentioned in part 1, early in year 7 was when the mass poisoning happened, which resulted in the death of one of Jellyfishspeckle's friends, Downface. Shockingly, she didn't have much of a reaction. After having mimicked her clanmates and trying to change her personality in order to escape from the two legs that took her away, she realizes now that she's completely forgotten who she really is. Weedspeckle feels blank and empty, and on top of that, returning to Ganetstar was one of the main things urging her to find a way back home, and now Ganetstar wanted nothing to do with her. SplashClan is not the same place as it was when Jellyfishspeckle was younger, and it's very obvious it's all because of Ganetstar's terrible leadership. As Ganetstar's daughter, she felt like it was up to her to do something. Over the next few months, she came up with a plan. Somehow, she was going to work as hard as she could, become the strongest, fiercest warrior she could be in order to become deputy somehow and reform her clan. She could see how tired Brackenshade was getting, and the whole clan knew there was no way he could handle being leader. He was going to step down eventually. To help her, she decided to team up with Thunderisle, promising her the role of deputy once she became leader. And in exchange, Thunderisle promised to elect her deputy if she were to become leader. The one issue with this plan though, Jellyfishspeckle had never had an apprentice. Then, 5 orphaned kits were brought into the clan by Lightgale and Thornpaw. There were now 8 kits in the nursery, meaning that this was the perfect opportunity for her to get an apprentice, and thankfully for her, Jellyfishspeckle received Flitpaw, one of the orphaned kits, as her first apprentice. Training went by quickly, and Flitpaw was a skilled young cat. By the time Flitfoot was 11 months old, she became a warrior, and Jellyfishspeckle was now an accomplished mentor. It wasn't long after that when news spread through the clan that Brackenshade was going to retire to the Elder's Den early. Jellyfishspeckle could hardly believe what a perfect opportunity this was, but unfortunately, she wasn't picked for deputy. Lightspots was. Thankfully though, she could tell how uncomfortable with the position Lightspots was and knew his relationship with Ganetstar was complicated, so she let him in on the plan, and he actually agreed to start slowly warming Ganetstar up to the idea of him retiring and her electing Jellyfishspeckle as his replacement. Unfortunately, Ganetstar died before this could happen, and Lightstar was now the leader of SplashClan. As an apology, Lightstar decided to elect Jellyfishspeckle as his first deputy, feeling as though she was a strong, reliable, and responsible cat who could not only handle the position, but help in rebuilding the clan. Now deputy, she's beginning to feel badly about the plan she had made. Was this really what she had wanted? She wanted things to be better, but now Ganetstar is gone, and she feels as though she's lost everything, including herself along the way. Early in year 7, Thornpaw was still struggling to keep up with his medicine cat training, but later received his full name, Thornheart. Now a full medicine cat, he dealt with the massive losses of both the mass poisoning and the mass disappearance, which made him begin to doubt himself as a medicine cat. Regardless, he considered taking an apprentice, thinking that having an apprentice would take a lot of the weight and pressure of being the clan's sole medicine cat off his shoulders. To make the stress of dealing with those two events even worse, his father and mentor, Lightgale, was one of the cats who disappeared, which left him having to deal with his grief. Though he eventually recovered, he's proving himself to not be the best medicine cat and has been caught breaking minor rules in the warrior code multiple times. He seems far more interested in forming bonds and relationships with the cats in his clan than his duties, having developed crushes on Whitestrike, Thornheart, Dropsun, and Emberfreckle, with Dropsun and Emberfreckle even reciprocating. Knowing what I know currently about this guy, yeah, he's not all that interested in being with one cat at a time, especially not when he needs to, tell them that. Regardless of that, Thornheart actually has an apprentice, a new member of the clan named Sparrowpaw, who I will delve into later in the video. The first thing that happened to Thunderisle this year was the death of her kit, Thornheart, who was the last living of her first litter. Knowing that she had outlived all of them tore her apart, and just about the one thing that helped her get through this was Lightgale, since he was also going through the same thing. Eventually, Thunderisle was able to recover from her grief, but while she tried to move on, she felt incredibly unappreciated, restless, and useless in the clan. When Dropkit, Flitfoot, Sardinekit, Hyacinthkit, and Emberkit arrived in the clan, Thunderisle thought that this would be a sign that having more kits was what would make her feel better, but she ended up deciding this wasn't the case. Either way, she was very intrigued and curious about them since her friend Whitestrike had mentioned to her how there was something odd about them. Whitestrike unfortunately disappeared in SplashClan's mass disappearance, sending her back into mourning. Having already gone through the grief of losing her kit, Thornheart, she didn't have the energy or the will to mope around any longer, so she got up and began searching for something to fix things. It wasn't long after when Jellyfishspeckle caught her eye, and she immediately knew something was up with her. When she confronted Jellyfishspeckle, she admitted to having come up with a plan to somehow become deputy and then leader, and decided to get Thunderisle in on it, promising that if she became leader, Thunderisle would be deputy, as long as if Thunderisle became leader, she'd make Jellyfishspeckle deputy in return. Thunderisle agreed to it, having recently been eyeing the position of deputy. Later on, she received another apprentice, this being Littlepaw, another member of the clan who we'll talk about in more detail later. As she trained Littlepaw, she worked as hard as she could and tried to put in more effort than any of the other mentors were, hoping that Lightstar would notice her and potentially make her deputy once Brackenshade stepped down. Unfortunately for Thunderisle, though, the plan fell through when Brackenshade did retire and Lightstar was instead chosen to be deputy, and Lightstar died before he was able to step down, leaving Lightstar as the new leader of SplashClan. Though Lightstar told Thunderisle that if something were to happen to Jellyfishspeckle or if she were to become leader, the deputy position was still promised to her, but she decided to drop it. Thunderisle wasn't old yet, but she wasn't exactly young anymore either, and she knew that she couldn't live her life, live another 9 lives, and end up being satisfied and happy. She'd just be miserable. She thanked Lightspots and Jellyfishspeckle anyway, but decided that from then on, she was just going to be a good warrior, not for anyone else, but for herself. Just like with Thunderisle, one of the first things that happened to her son Whitestrike this year was the death of Thornheart, his adoptive older sibling. Whitestrike was unsure of how exactly he was supposed to go on without them and felt like he was unable to function with his immense grief. Thankfully, he was able to eventually pick himself back up, being the sneaky, sarcastic, and snarky tomcat who told the kits his leg had been bitten off by a giant sea monster the clan knew him as. Though on the outside he seemed to have gotten better from his grief, he still felt pretty gloomy though. As time passed, he began to get to know Jellyfishspeckle more, but in the end, he began to realize she wasn't exactly a cat he liked being around, thinking that she was annoying and thought that it was odd how often she seemed to stare unnervingly at Lightstar. Throughout the year, he still continued to have issues with his missing leg, something that he knows he's just going to have to get used to, but he was still trying his best to be as great of a warrior as he could be and was hoping that he'd get noticed by Lightstar. Later in these 2 years, Whitestrike finally received his first apprentice, that being the newcomer Palmtree. Palmtree, along with his littermates, were all outsiders to SplashClan who had joined when they were already nearly apprentice age, something that Whitestrike could relate to. Wanting to receive positive attention from his clanmates, he worked as hard as he could to train Palmtree, and by the end of year 8, Palmtree became a warrior. At 10 months old, the first cat in the clan to become a warrior that young. Whitestrike feels incredibly proud for having trained Palmtree, knowing he did a good job, and especially so since he can relate to Palmtree being an outsider too. Throughout it all, no matter how long Whitestrike serves as a SplashClan warrior, his heart will always be soft for clan outsiders, and he's actually been frequently caught talking to passing rogues and loners, having a friendly conversation with them. Minkscratch, who most of you will all remember as Minkpaw from the last few videos, was made a warrior early in year 7. Not long after he'd become a warrior, he was badly injured in a fox attack. He was left to recover in the medicine den for months, his tail becoming infected, and like Gale, ended up amputating his tail as a last resort. The loss of his tail didn't seem to bother him though, and he seemed rather content afterwards. Being a compassionate young cat, Minkscratch is very in tune with the emotions and feelings of the cats around him, which resulted in him as well picking up on what was going on with Snapfern as a result of Stone Screech constantly being on edge and sneaking around. As time passed, Minkscratch didn't ever change his ways and never fully adjusted into being the typical clan warrior. He always liked to take things easy and didn't care much for the typical clan duties, preferring to do whatever was needed of him in the clan's camp. Thankfully for him, he didn't at all mind using the various infections and phantom pain he would get from his tail as an excuse to avoid going on patrols. Later on in this span of time, he realized he wanted to have kits of his own, but he wasn't entirely interested in anyone just yet. So he made a deal with another cat in the clan who wanted to have kits, Sardinefuzz, and the two had a litter who they named Hushkit, Chirpkit, Hailkit, and Splashkit. Before their litter was born, however, Minkscratch was caught in a two-leg trap which left his leg incredibly injured, leading to his leg also having to be amputated. Minkscratch is happy to be a father and even more content with raising his litter with Sardinefuzz in the nursery, even if his missing tail and leg are constantly giving him trouble. As long as he's needed in the clan's camp, he'll be happy. Sparkstep is up next, and first things first, she suffered heat exhaustion early in year 7, which I'm sure wasn't fun, but she was thankful to Basil Bramble in particular for her treatment. Later on, she received her first apprentice, that being Brockenpaw, and was happy to begin training him, although she seemed to neglect her duties as his mentor, instead preferring to run off and explore the territory for the millionth time. While adventuring and neglecting her duties as Brockenpaw's mentor, Sparkstep ended up realizing there was definitely something suspicious going on with Snapfern, and almost figured out she was spying on everyone for Ganetstar like Stone Scratch did. But Snapfern died before she could really come to any conclusion. Unfortunately, Sparkstep's apprentice Brockenpaw also died in the mass disappearance, which left her feeling incredibly disappointed. It wasn't long after that either when she went on patrol with Icestripe and they were attacked by a dog, resulting in Icestripe dying and her going into shock. While she was recovering from having witnessed such a horrific event, she seemingly went through some personal reevaluating because by the end of it, not only was she back to normal, but he decided that he's trans. So Sparkstep's a guy now. After having neglected so many of his duties, Sparkstep is beginning to worry if the clan is judging him, and it's making him desperate to prove to them that he's matured and isn't the cat he was before. He hasn't gotten up to too much since transitioning, but Sparkstep desperately wants to get better as a warrior, become stronger, and he's willing to do anything to get that, especially now that he's begun to have some pretty strange dreams. As for the newcomer in the clan, old Deutereonomyplume, she's gotten used to clan life very well. Later in year 7, Ganetstar and Brackenshade trusted her enough to receive her first apprentice, Emberpaw, since her original mentor Tidal Wave had been a part of the mass disappearance, and Emberpaw later became a warrior under her guidance, being named Emberfreckle. As time passed throughout the rest of the span of time, old Deutereonomyplume was in complete awe of how bad of a leader Ganetstar was, and became very stressed in the clan as a result of her bad decisions and increasingly short temper. Her stress culminated in the summer when she suffered a heat stroke, put on by her working as hard as she could to appease her leader. Later on, old Deutereonomyplume actually went missing and later returned wearing a red collar, having been taken away by Two Legs and successfully escaped. Overall, old Deutereonomyplume hasn't done a whole lot yet, but I really love her. She's proven herself to be really responsible, and she's just really cool. Dropsun was brought into the clan as a kit, having been found as a newborn alongside her littermates, Flittkit, Sardinekit, Hyacinthkit, and Emberkit by Lightgale and Thornpaw. Their father, a rogue named Finian, was known vaguely by the cats of SplashClan since he passed by their territory often, but now he was dead. Dropkit and her siblings were taken in by Whitestrike. Dropkit was a pretty standard kit, acting like a know-it-all, pestering the older warriors to know more about the world, and playing with her denmates and littermates. Unbeknownst to her, though, her father, Finian, had a natural connection to the Dark Forest, and this was a trait that he had passed on to her. From a young age, she dreamt of a dark place, and everyone seemed to brush her dreams off as just that, dreams. She was later apprenticed to Jumbledapple, however, a month later she disappeared alongside her littermate, Hyacinthpaw, and Hootheart was chosen by Brackenshade to be her replacement. She felt sad that her first mentor and brother were gone, but with the weakened state SplashClan was in, Droppaw felt her ambition growing and growing, vowing to be the best warrior she could be. Dropsun later grew into a charismatic young warrior, being honored for her passion, and as she aged, her connection to the Dark Forest became stronger and stronger, though she still assumes it's all just a dream. Not long after she became a warrior, Dropsun actually announced she was expecting kits, and a few months later gave birth to Ripplekit and Thymekit, but never admitted to the fact that the other parent of her kits was a clan outsider. In the nursery, things have been getting weirder and weirder for her. Her dreams are becoming stronger and stronger, and off in the distance she sees a figure walking towards her, a figure that looks awfully like Lightstar. Suddenly, she's beginning to realize that these might not just be dreams, but something very, very real. Flitfoot is the second of the orphan kits SplashClan took in. Though growing up she was the most nervous, there was still an adventurous side to her that the clan was just unable to calm, resulting in her sneaking out of the camp multiple times as a kid. When she became 6 months old, Jellyfishspeckle was chosen to be her mentor due to Brackenshade believing that the warrior could help Flitpaw overcome her nervousness and anxiety. This was a success, and by the time Flitfoot became a warrior, she had become incredibly fierce and was honored for how much of a hard worker she was. Though Flitfoot is now a warrior, she hasn't done much and hasn't received an apprentice of her own yet. Since she has a skill in mediating, she senses future conflict with the other clans, but is unsure of what exactly the conflict is. Sardinefuzz is the next of the orphan kits, and yes, that is the name the game gave him, and yes, I refuse to change it because it was just too funny. Of his littermates, Sardinekit was the most cautious and basically just wanted to be taken care of all the time. There was even one time as a kit where he suffered heat exhaustion, but later that same month he got a scrape and begged for life-saving herbs because he wanted to stay in the medicine den for longer. When Sardinepaww was 6 months old, he was apprenticed to Brackenshade, and now that he was an apprentice, he became much more outgoing, playful, and friendly. He began to get along better with his littermates and the other apprentices, being known as the class clown in the apprentices den. Unfortunately though, him becoming more playful led to him being the last of his littermates to become a warrior, which made him act all angsty. Eventually, Sardinefuzz was granted with his warrior name, and he was honored for his determination as well as his valuable insight. It was around this time when Sardinefuzz realized the value kits had in the clan and wanted to someday have his own, but he wasn't all that interested in anyone in the clan at the time. He later learned that Minkscratch actually felt similarly, and the two decided to have kits together, even if they weren't partners. Minkscratch stayed in the nursery to care for their 4 kits, Hushkit, Chirpkit, Hailkit, and Splashkit, while Sardinefuzz kept up with his warrior duties. It was around this time too when he received his first apprentice, that being Ravenpaw. Now that Lightstar is leader, he's beginning to really realize how important it is to have a good leader and is in awe of how well Lightstar is handling things despite it all, which is making Sardinefuzz begin to consider the possibility of maybe trying to become deputy someday. Emberfreckle is the last of the orphan kits. Growing up, Emberkit was quite the bully and even tormented and started rumors about her denmates, though mostly Sardinekit and Brackenshade. As she got older, she stopped being mean to her denmates but instead became rather cold and was pretty nasty when others approached her. Emberpaw later became an apprentice and Untitled was chosen to be her mentor. However, a month later, her mentor disappeared and old Deutereonomyplume was picked to be her replacement. As an apprentice, Emberpaw worked hard and strived to be known as a strong, tough warrior, but was still pretty angsty as most apprentices were. Emberfreckle was later granted her warrior name and was honored for her level-headedness, but turned away to start her silent vigil before anyone in the clan got a chance to congratulate her. Now a warrior, she firmly believes that the clan should be harsher on those who break the warrior code. She's a fierce, strong warrior who does her job very well, but lacks any major connection to her clanmates, even having flatly insulted the appearance of a clanmate and turned away from someone when they tried to vent to her in the past. Regardless of that all, she's incredibly curious about Lightstar as the clan's new leader and wants to understand him better. The next cat in the clan is another newcomer actually. One day, while Lightspots was deputy, he went out on patrol with Flitfoot and stumbled across a former loner named Scale. Scale had fled his past home with his 4 kits, Raven, Palm, Little, and Sparrow, due to a danger that was threatening them in their old home. He begged Lightspots and Flitfoot to accept them into the clan, which they of course did, Flitfoot advocating for them since the clan had taken in her and her littermates when they were young. For the past few months, Scalefleck has been a warrior of SplashClan but hasn't done anything crazy as he's still adjusting to clan life. He's a strict warrior who spends time watching over the kits and is a good mediator. Palmtree is currently the youngest warrior in the clan, and as mentioned before, is the youngest ever warrior SplashClan has at only 10 months old. Palmtree arrived in SplashClan as Palm, a former rogue, alongside his littermates, and was initially quite the daydreamer. Though his father Scalefleck wanted to mentor him, Lightstar and Brackenshade ended up apprenticing him to Whitestrike, since clan culture generally frowns upon parents mentoring their apprentices. Looking directly at you, Lightstar. And Whitestrike had already requested an apprentice of his own. As Palmpaw got to training, he realized how important being a good warrior and succeeding in life really was, and he ended up really honing in on his training, which made Whitestrike very happy. Palmtree began to value his training over everything else, growing lackluster socialization skills and deciding to follow his own rules and mindset, ignoring the advice anyone other than his mentor would give him. Palmtree was even known for chastising his littermates for slacking off, even if they weren't training that day. It was because of his hard work that he had repeatedly proven himself time and time again at such a young age that he was ready to conclude his apprenticeship. Palmtree was named a warrior and was honored for his newly formed adventurous spirit and great hunting skills. Ravenpaw is the next of Scalefleck's kits, who happens to be the oldest of the litter. When he arrived in the clan, Ravenkit was the quietest of his littermates and was much more interested in the stories the clan cats would tell him than hunting or fighting. He was later made an apprentice, with the young warrior Sardinefuzz becoming his mentor. Though he was excited to be an apprentice, his short time in the clan had somehow turned him into a righteous young apprentice who refused to follow Sardinefuzz's orders due to his own morals. Unfortunately for Ravenpaw, though, he ended up getting stuck in a two-leg trap and sprained his paw. For the next month, he sat in the medicine den, blankly staring off into space as he hoped to quickly recover. Thankfully, in the month after, he was feeling well enough to get back to training and was so incredibly excited. To make things worse, though, only a month after this, Ravenpaw caught yellow cough and has yet to recover. Through his past injury and sickness, though, Sardinefuzz has continued to visit him and keep him company in the medicine den, and it's only now that he's beginning to really bond with him and realizes how great of a mentor he really is. Littlepaw is the next of Scalefleck's litter of kits and is the second youngest. Littlekit entered the clan as a daring and quick-witted young Tom, and this sure didn't change, even once he became an apprentice and grew more charismatic. He was apprenticed to Thunderisle, and the two got along pretty well. Throughout his apprenticeship so far, she's influenced him a lot, though this might not always be a good thing since this is Thunderisle we're talking about. He's a better problem solver now, but unfortunately as he's progressed through his training, he's become quick to anger, and this has led to him being a bit of an outcast amongst his littermates since he's not very pleasant to be around sometimes. Either way, Littlepaw isn't that bad of a guy. He wants to have a mate in kits of his own someday and even scolded one of Minkscratch's kits, Hushkit, for disrespecting Brackenshade, proving that he's got a strong respect for the older cats of the clan. Regardless of everything, Littlepaw is still a hard-working apprentice and won't stop at his training or his boring apprentice duties until he can be made a warrior. And the last of Scalefleck's litter of kits is his only daughter, Sparrowpaw. As the only she-cat of her litter and being the youngest, Sparrowkit felt like she needed to have more attention and wanted to do anything she could to achieve that. So when she became 6 months old, she decided, probably against her better judgment, to become a medicine cat and was now being trained by the clan's sole medicine cat, Thornheart. The cats of SplashClan were so incredibly relieved when she became a medicine cat. Not that they doubted Thornheart, but he's never been the most, spiritually attuned or respectful medicine cat, especially when he's more interested in romance than actually doing his job. Unfortunately for the clan, however, Sparrowpaw was probably not the best cat they could have gotten because just like Thornheart, she's got a very lackluster connection to StarClan and struggles to reach them at all, though she's pretty good at memorizing herbs. Despite everything she's good at, she struggled a lot with her apprenticeship, which has left her feeling frustrated and has led to her developing quite a childish and immature personality, even if she herself is known for scolding others for being immature. Sparrowpaw is still trying her best, although I'm not sure how well SplashClan's StarClan connection is going to be in the future, especially now that the Dark Forest has their eyes on SplashClan's cats, especially its youth. Now moving on to Minkscratch and Sardinefuzz's kits. The oldest of the litter is Hushkit, who is quite the little bully. Though he's a quick-witted young cat, it's clear his teasing and facade as a bully is just a front in order to hide the fact that he feels insecure about how small he is compared to his littermates. He's a funny little guy though, and even tried to taunt and make fun of Brackenshade by telling him that his parents were probably rogues, which is probably the case, Hushkit. Unfortunately though, Hushkit has also caught yellow cough, so hopefully he'll recover. Chirpkit is the next of Minkscratch and Sardinefuzz's litter. He's the second oldest and is a charming little kit who's interested in clan history. He's so interested in clan history that he's known for escaping camp in order to see cool things the clan tells him about in the territory, and has to constantly be scolded for it, which he hates since he doesn't want to be babied. Despite it all, Chirpkit is very patient and quick to make peace with his littermates, even if they bully him, and the clan even sees him as being really cute. Next up is Hailkit, the second youngest of Minkscratch and Sardinefuzz's litter, and he's also a bully just like Hushkit. He's interested in clan history just like Chirpkit does, but he tries to hide it by making fun of him for it. He's definitely quite the pest and is constantly getting into trouble for little things like bringing thorns into the nest, but he tries to act like none of that bothers him, hoping that the others will think that he's tough. Splashkit is the next of Minkscratch and Sardinefuzz's litter, and he's named after SplashClan, which I think is pretty cool. As the youngest, he's the quietest and gets along with Chirpkit the best, although that's an obvious fact since I doubt he'd be getting along well with Hushkit or Hailkit. Splashkit is a very careful listener, despite the fact that no matter what anyone tries to tell him, he seems to always get tired and start drifting off. Now moving on to Dropsun's kits, the first being Ripplekit, who unfortunately is very insecure and feels as though nothing she does is ever right. Despite that though, she's a pretty normal kit who hates being given gross medicine, doesn't ever sit still, and thinks Hushkit is really loud and obnoxious. Even though her sister Thymekit is similarly troublesome and loud like Hushkit, she still really loves her. Thymekit is the other one of Dropsun's kits. Like I had mentioned with Ripplekit, she's definitely troublesome and loud and likes to play pretend and play in the tide pools that are around SplashClan's camp. She even tried to sneak out of camp at one point, having learned how to do so from Chirpkit. She feels very different from the other cats though, since none of them can relate to her about something. She seems to be the only kit in the nursery who has strange dreams where she's taken to a dark, dingy forest. She dreams about it almost every night, and yet no one else knows what she's talking about. And finally, onto SplashClan's only elder currently, good old Brackenshade. Early in year 7, he suffered from heat stroke, but was thankfully able to recover quickly. As he recovered, he became even more self-conscious about himself and his role as deputy, wondering what the cats of the clan thought about him. The mass disappearance later happened, resulting in the deaths of his mate, Whitestrike, as well as his two kits, Nutpaw and Brockenpaw. Brockenshade was so horribly devastated by this massive loss, and this was only made worse by Lightstar beginning to slowly break down over time. One day, while trying to get through his duties, he overheard Jellyfishspeckle talking to Thunderisle about her plan to become deputy once Brackenshade retires. He hadn't been planning to retire at all, but after the recent events, hearing that made him begin to consider that maybe he should retire. Jellyfishspeckle was his apprentice after all. He would trust her to take over the clan. He feels very unsure about retiring so young though, so he decides to keep on at it, hoping to someday find love again after the death of his mate Whitestrike. Unfortunately though, he began to really struggle with his role as deputy, and this only got worse when his last kit with Whitestrike, Icestripe, died while on a patrol. Brackenshade just couldn't handle anything anymore, and he decided to retire to the Elder's Den early, hoping that Jellyfishspeckle would succeed him, but to his shock, Lightstar picked Lightspots as his replacement. Now retired, it's clear to everyone how broken down, tired, and depressed he really is, and Thornheart has begun to try to give him a daily herb treatment to make him feel better. Only a few months after his retirement though, Lightstar died with Lightstar becoming the new leader, which didn't help at all with his broken mental state. Brackenshade's just really tired, and after having lost everyone he loves, he just wants to be alone right now, though at least Lightstar is still there to keep him company. And that's the end of year 7 to 8 for SplashClan. I hope you all enjoyed, even if I don't think most of these cats ended year 8 on a good note, but I am still really excited to continue with the series. I've already played through all the way to the end of year 12, and I'm currently trying to catch it before I go any further. Oh, the self-restraint I've had to not play through anymore. Either way, I'm really excited to continue with the series. I'm just so attached to these guys.